On this episode of ResiWeek, we talk software solutions, smart, safe, and sustainable, and cybersecurity. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek, episode 305, Cyber Terms.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Just Add Power
and by Audio.
Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv. And this week, I'm pleased to be joined by two of my good friends. First, we have Mr. Jason Knott. He is the Chief Content Officer at CE Pro. How you doing, Jason?
I'm doing well, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Then we have Giles Sutton. He is the SVP at Cedia. How you doing, Giles?
I'm doing really well. I can't believe we're here in December, getting close to the end of 2021. Can you believe it? But yeah,
I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. We are so close to the end of the year. And I did a walkthrough this morning with a client, and I'm like, we can't fit this in this year. They're like, really? I'm like, it is 19 days till Christmas? No, sorry.
Don't say it.
No, we're done. Let's talk about our first story of the day. This comes to us from CE Pro. Integrators sound off on what they want from their software suppliers. Read through this article as well as kind of the accompanying article at the bottom. You'll see the link to the deep dive on software. They're going through, from your company, Jason, they're going through and giving quotes from integrators on what they're looking for in software. And initially, I was kind of trying to parse if this was about something specific or just software in general, which I quickly realized it was just software in general. But it makes a lot of sense. And honestly, there's a lot of, I don't want to say gripes, but concerns that I have in my own business of things like, I don't want multiple monthly fees. I just want to purchase a version. We just did that for some of our software where we couldn't purchase a version, and it's a monthly. It's ridiculous. Jason, when you look through obviously this list, when you go through that deep dive, should we be looking at industry specific software across the board, or should we? Is it trying to find software that meets your needs, whether it's industry specific or whether it's just software?
So it's a good question, Matt. We did ask in the survey the difference between off-the-shelf software versus industry-specific software, and it really is a mix. Mm-hmm. I think, 5 years ago, if we'd asked this, it would have been predominantly off-the-shelf, and there's much more industry-specific stuff than ever. But one of the things that really came out from this is the frustration. You talk to integrators who, for example, had a piece of software and they have abandoned that piece of software for various reasons, but they have to continue to pay a licensing fee in order to access their data from their projects that is still included in from when they completed that software. And so they look at it's a source of frustration, not just from a cost standpoint, but I really encourage everybody to read the opening. We were talking about it briefly before we got on, but just a very simple customer service based response that Paul Ostrin from Unlimited Integration in Houston had mentioned to me about how his HVAC contractor is able to immediately bring up what kind of system he has when he calls, immediately schedule an appointment on the phone, immediately send text messages when they're on the way, as well as a photo of the technician, immediately accept payment, and not one of those payment systems that holds on to your money for a long time, but immediately accept payment and get it into his account very quickly. And he goes, this is a small 2-truck HVAC company. So he goes, the fact that our industry doesn't have something that can do that same thing is really a tragedy.
Well, and we did talk about this kind of pre-show, but they're using a piece of software that you can just go and sign up for and use it. We haven't seen it really used in our industry yet. Giles, one of the things that the article talks on, Jason touched on it as well, is the interoperability aspect of it. We need software that speaks to our other software. We need to know that if we've got a sales piece of software that we use to generate invoices, generate quotes, etc., that it can cross-reference with something else, so that you can, again, dig in and find serial numbers, find warranty terms, all of that fun stuff. How much of this is software-based versus how much of it is a business process-based? Because I got tons of software that I rarely use because I don't necessarily have the process in place yet to utilize the software.
I think it's a bit of both. I think that if we had a more of a one-stop solution for the industry, I think that would solve a lot of the process issues, I would think. I remember when I was an integrator, and our industry, when you look at the different software packages that are available, there are none that really completely match the business model of an integrator very well. So our industry is kind of interesting in that we sell products, but we also sell services. We don't sell products, and then we don't work on a part payment system. So the products that we're selling will be then split in different in percentages, which when you start to look at that using just a standard accounting software, it can become incredibly complicated. And I think because of that, if you're just using a standard accounting package for your business, that's when people kind of cheat and just put in single line items for installation or single line items for design, because it's not a fully integrated piece of software. So I think I definitely favor a more sort of personalized package for the industry. There are, packages out there for, the home services industry, for pros that are, independent businesses that are out there, but there doesn't seem to be that kind of fully integrated package that would solve some of the process challenges and unique challenges that our industry faces.
Yeah, I'd love to say that we are not unique, but that side is really big. And I know just from my own experience running a residential and a commercial business, the software that is built for the resi industry doesn't help me in the commercial side, and the commercial side, vice versa, really doesn't work in the residential space as well. It's a convoluted space, but definitely check those articles out. They're very good. Let's change topics to our next story of the day. This comes to us from Residential Systems. Smart, safe, and sustainable, the keys to the smart building. They're at ISE in 2022 in Barcelona. There will be another edition of the Smart Building Conference that will reflect the latest concepts in smart home design. Read through the article. It kind of touches on the four high-level aspects of smart building, including connected home, well tech, media management solutions, as well as technologies for working life. Giles, I want to start with you on this one. The connected home aspect, I feel for the most part we've got a handle on. I'm a little confused with media management, and this seems to come up more and more in the connected home aspect, as far as how do you manage that media? How do you go about managing your streaming services, your on-site audio, your on-site video, with, again, all the streaming platforms that are out there? Before, in the past, you maybe had a DVD vault, if you will, from a couple of manufacturers. You might have had an audio vault, a music library that you sourced from. Now that streaming has taken over, for lack of a better term, are we to the point where media management really isn't in our wheelhouse? This is better suited for the Apple TVs or the Rokus of the world?
That's a really interesting question, because actually it is almost media management. Also, it sort of is morphing into becoming a feature on a product now, isn't it? In some respects, I agree with you. Like the previous ways we would manage a client's DVD collection is through a server like a Kaleidoscope or something like that. And then we moved into hardware streaming devices. And now we've moved into basically the media going direct to the TV and actually not, and not necessarily even needing to be distributed around the home. So I think we are at the point where that is no longer something that is in our wheelhouse. However, I would just go back to the point that quality is still one of the major problems, and that's why we still see a lot of distribution over AV over IP because of that. So there is still the need to have, I believe, distribution in when quality is a key piece, but. Yeah, increasingly this is taken away from us and becomes a feature set on a consumer device. I think that's the only challenge with that is you are then beholden to the ecosystem that device is part of, and we all know what that means. Seeing all the sort of studio consolidation and the partnerships with with different brands. And for example, last night I spotted that on my iPad through the sort of Apple TV consolidated library, you can't actually access YouTube TV because obviously it's a big competitor now with Apple. So that's where you start to get into those challenges. Is that all these brands are now media management is now becoming the feature by which they're selling devices. So it's actually becoming it's becoming competition, and we're sort of in the middle of it all.
I think it would be interesting to know, and Matt, maybe you can address this with your customer base. What percentage of higher end customers are relying solely on a streaming service for their sources versus maybe having some sort of a media platform? And then you see companies like Dish that the reason they focus on this channel is because when an integrator sells a customer Dish, that customer never leaves. Yeah. Rich people don't jump around their cable services. So they stay. So I see your point on the streaming services, but I wonder where that goes with the affluent customer. If there's a streaming service, but they're always going to be somebody who subscribes to either some sort of a cable or some sort of a satellite service.
What we found, and I'll preface it with the comment that I'm in Canada. Our distribution rights are convoluted to say the least. For example, SEAL Team went to Paramount this year, about a month ago, and it's a CBS show if you've never seen it. In Canada, Paramount does not have the streaming rights to SEAL Team because Global has it, is who they have a contract with. So up until episode 5, when it was on CBS and streaming on Paramount the next day, you could get both of those on either Global streaming or Paramount streaming here. Now you can't get the follow-up episodes anywhere. They just don't exist. But I preface that to say that what we found up here is that, especially with the affluent customers, they're paying full bandwidth for cable or satellite, right? They're maintaining that subscription, and then they're just adding all the streaming platforms as well. So the promise of, hey, you can now stream everything and save some money and yada, 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 we haven't really seen that here yet. And partially because there's a lot of content that you just cannot find on a streaming platform. And not like it's hard, it just doesn't exist. They don't have rights for it here. It's limited. It's still convoluted here. But I am finding that more and more clients, even our affluent clients, they're frustrated with the $200, $300 a month cable bills, and they're looking at it. But yes, Jason, to your point, they don't bounce around. They don't play up here. Bell versus Rogers. They don't play that game the way some of the other consumers do. Jason, one of the things in here that I found interesting, and I don't like the term, but they're talking about the technologies for working life. Obviously, the last 18 months or so, we've talked a lot about working from home and home offices, etc. In the article, they talk about businesses wanting to, from their IT department, track products, keep things up to date, etc. I've heard that talked about a lot, but I have not seen that in most companies that we work with, and most of the people that I talk to around the industry still haven't seen corporate America, for lack of a better term, taking ownership over in-house technologies for work. Now, they're managing that customer or that employee issued laptop and phone, but they're not wanting to own the streaming web cameras or the multi-screen setups. I've talked to residential integrators who want to own that, but clients don't necessarily want to pay for that out of pocket.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did a panel at our Total Tech Summit a few weeks ago where we talked specifically about the resi-mercial, and one of the areas was work from home trends. And it was interesting because you would have thought that people were just knocking down your doors to put in these very high-end home offices. And everybody said it was only the C-suite.
Yeah.
That once you got past the owner or the president of the company, virtually all the employees were to their own devices. Hey, whatever you come set up for your own home office, that's what you got. That's what you got to do. And so the trend was overblown. The companies weren't, I would say, overblown in terms of beyond the C-suite. Because obviously, guys, we're putting in some nice, multi-monitor systems with nice lighting and those sorts of things. But they said it wasn't this huge number of installations that they thought it was going to be, because companies just left all their employees to their own devices. So it kind of goes hand in hand with what you're saying in terms of, I don't know that the media management part of this got extended beyond the owners of the companies for the work from home trend. Whether that's going to continue as we go down the line, I mean, people are still working from home. I'm working from home right now, and I rarely did that prior to the pandemic, and now I know I will consistently.
I think in everything that I've read, in every panel I've been on, and every discussion I've had, including I've talked a lot about this with David Danto, who some of you might know off Twitter. It seems to be that unless corporate is going to put money towards it, your average worker bee, again, for the lack of a better term, they're not going to spend out-of-pocket money to add LED light panels or add a better mic with an arm or add a camera. They're not going to go out and do anything beyond, the $79 Logitech camera they can pick up from Staples. And I think that has been the issue, plaguing work from home. I'd love to talk wellness about in this article as well, but we'll leave that for another day. Let's hit our last topic of the day. This comes to us from CE Pro, because I know Giles is excited about it. Basic cybersecurity terms and definitions integrators should know. Amy Rock wrote this, and it as it said, it's a list and a great definition of a ton of really basic cybersecurity terms. Go through the list. They cover the basic terms, and then they cover the most common types of cyber attacks, including malware, phishing, man-in-the-middle, denial of service, IoT attacks, password attacks, etc. There's a lot of stuff in there. Jason, I'm conflicted on this. One, it is a fantastic collection of terms that everyone working in this industry should know. And I'm equal parts disappointed that Amy had to write it, because I feel like we should know this and we shouldn't have to go over this again. But I know we have to. What's involved in actually getting our industry to actually dig into this and not go, cybersecurity is very important, very important. I sold a router that has a firewall in it. We're good.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. We actually have tabbed it again for our January issue as one of the top 5 technologies that integrators can't ignore. heading into 2022. We did a survey last year, and we asked what percentage of integrators are actually providing some layer of additional cybersecurity protection beyond what's in the hardware, beyond what's in the router. And it was 27% was the number, which may actually sound probably higher than you might have expected.
Yeah.
But those are the guys doing Sonic Wall or Defender or whatever it might be. And the issue's not going away. I think it was Parks Associates that did a study, and they asked people, smart home users, what was their number one concern, and it was 79% was data privacy. So this could go back. This reminds me a little bit about, for years, home builders never wanted to talk about the security elements that they brought into their homes. They didn't want to talk about the surveillance cameras or the alarm systems or anything like that. And the reason being, why should I introduce the concept that I'm building a house in a potentially unsafe neighborhood?
Yeah.
And so it kind of makes me feel a little bit the same. The integrators, they want to ignore the subject because they don't want to introduce the concept to the homeowner that I'm putting something in that has the potential to be hacked.
Yeah. Giles, I think there's two continual factors of this. There is trying to explain to a customer, as Jason pointed out, that yes, we only offer devices that are highly secure, but that means literally nothing. You can sell the most secure product, and it's still very likely or very possible to be hacked or have something go wrong with it at some point. The other aspect is, of course, the education side of this. There are manufacturers that offer stuff. CD offers stuff, but we still don't see it taken advantage of as much. How do you, from a business owner standpoint, how do you go about recognizing the threat, right, and learning from it? Where do you go to get that information? And how do you explain to your customers that, yeah, that router that we sold you or that router that the ISP gave you, it's great. It still wouldn't hurt you to put a firewall in place.
Well, there absolutely needs to be education on this. And I think it's really interesting that, I don't know whether it was an intentional segue, Matt, but you went from, talking about work from home and the fact that, the multinational corporations are not controlling the technology that's going into homes that have their computers connected to them. And then, what Jason said around the fact that, integrators don't want to have those discussions that open the door to the question that a system that's going in is potentially unsafe. However, that is exactly the reason why this is such a major issue for our industry. I'm actually studying a part-time master's in law and technology at the moment at UCLA, and one of the main reasons I did this is because of cybersecurity and privacy, and because of the liability threat that exists for our industry around this particular area, and that is related to safety. The most legislation that exists for trades people in this industry is built because of safety. It's built because homes could burn down or flood. That's the reason that regulations exist. However, around this area, there's very little, there's been very few legal tests about who is actually responsible should a system that's installed by an integrator be hacked. For me, it feels like almost an accident waiting to happen, because we have high net worth individuals that are not necessarily very technically savvy, because that's why they hire professionals. And then you also have an industry where there hasn't been a lot of education, and where actually a lot of products are still installed with default passwords. And this article that's in CE Pro shows that actually, when you start to couple these systems with with lower cost kind of IoT devices, that can then that really can create significant vulnerabilities. So I think there needs to be a lot more focus on this from the industry. I agree with you that I would hope most integrators know most of these terms that are in here, but I think until we actually understand the liability, whether it's the integrator, the thing is, integrators install so many different products. Is it the product manufacturer that's liable? Should something happen, or should it, or is it ultimately the homeowner? And it's essentially negligence.
One quick point, and then I have a question for Giles. So, Giles, I don't know if you saw that there was a bill introduced in the UK that would make both the manufacturer and potentially the integrator who did not change a default password liable up to £20,000 a day. Could be, if it hasn't passed, from what I can tell, it was just introduced legislation. But if it were to become law, but let me ask this question, Giles: don't you see this is like a perfect opportunity for CEDIA level integrators to differentiate themselves in the market?
Absolutely. That was where I was going with it, because this is a lot of what the work that our government affairs teams are doing is sort of fighting legislation, and I believe this is a fantastic opportunity for us to position integrators as those specialists when it comes to cybersecurity and privacy. Because we can't avoid this. It's there's going to be more and more devices that are connected in the home. And ultimately, there needs to be education around this. But also, we need to be equipping integrators with the right tools so that they can actually ensure that their contracts that they're asking their homeowners to sign provide the right provisions so they're not liable should something go wrong. So I think a lot of opportunity. I'm
really glad you brought that up, Giles, because if you've listened to this show for more than a minute or two, it's not rare for me to come out and say, get your legalese in place, get a contract in place, get a liability release form in place. It's not a big deal. They're signing everything else every time they download an app, every time they renew their ADT alarm panel. They're releasing ADT from liability. They're releasing everyone else. They will release liability to you too. At the bare minimum, if you don't have something stating that you've done your best efforts to protect their network, but because they use their network every day, you don't know what they're going to do. If you don't have some basic liability releases, literally just stop selling network. Don't sell anything that plugs in. Just leave it alone.
That won't prevent your technician from not, changing the default password. That's the key. So it's like that will protect you to.
And I'm 100% in favor of that legislation. That is awesome. Do that. Oh, goodness. I'm going to get hate mail again for that one. Oh, well. All right, gentlemen. Thank you so much. Let's wrap it up there before I go on a legal rant. Giles, if people want to connect with you, learn more about CEDIA, where can they do that?
On Twitter or LinkedIn. Giles Sutton on LinkedIn, or CEDIA Giles on Twitter.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Mr. Knott, thank you for joining us. If people want to connect with you, learn more about CE Pro, where can they do that?
Obviously, they can go to cepro.com, and they can also follow me on Twitter at Jason W. Knott.
Excellent. Thank you both. Thanks again for joining us. If you'd like to connect with me, you can hit me on Twitter at Matty Scott and pretty much every other social platform. But more importantly, please visit AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek.